Hi everyone, out in the shed today, ready for another teardown. So today we're going to be taking apart a vacuum cleaner. Common little vacuum cleaner. And you know what we're going to get out of this? Well, we're going to get a copper motor out of it, and we will get copper wire as well. So most vacuum cleaners, why we tear them down is we take out the copper. So that's what we're going to be looking for today. So the first thing to remove is the dust collector. Absolutely nothing of value within the dust collector, and actually it's just full of dust, so just get rid of it. And we come on to the main unit, which will house the motor. Now you do find with these that they are absolutely full of screws, and the screws are hidden all over the place and sometimes can be quite difficult to get to. So recommend first of all remove any filters. As you can see, I've got the filter removed there. Let's just introduce a little bit more light on this so we can see a little bit better. Okay, so let's have a look at the screws. The screws are sitting quite deep, but they're all Phillips screws, so it should be fairly easy to get out with the right screwdriver. So let's just see if we can reach these ones. Obviously we'd much rather use the drill to get these out, but unfortunately they're set quite deep, these screws, so there's no way I'm going to get a drill bit in there. Hopefully we can get to all these ones with not too much hassle. As far as I can see initially, there's only 6 screws underneath, but I'll be surprised if that remains the case and there is only 6. We have to pop the wheels off, there's maybe some behind there as well, but we'll see how we go after we get these 6 off. Now the vacuum cleaner motors, the motors inside them, obviously you're looking to harvest the copper from the motor itself. The motors can actually be quite difficult to take apart. Inside the steel casing there is a little aluminium fan, and that can actually sometimes be very difficult to get off, so we'll show you that once we are able to get the motor out. First of all, still trying to get off this casing. And again, with vacuum cleaners like this, unfortunately it's a little amount of copper but a lot of plastic, so quite a bit of waste there. Okay, so that's the 6 screws. Now it would be great if this would just pop off. We're going to be lucky. Maybe a hidden screw under here. Let's have a quick look. No, no screw. Let's see if we can just pop it off. Well, there you go. A bit of luck, a bit of brute force, and we're immediately into what we're looking for. So that's fantastic. So as I say, lots of plastic waste. Nothing there. Put that to one side. Got the housing here for the motor. And that is attached to the power cable. We'll get that off in a minute. See if there's any way we can break out this plug. We'll just take the snips and cut it as high up towards the plug as we can. It's a moulded plug, so a lot more difficult to get the brass out of that, but that's fine. We'll shoot out the other plugs. Second casing is off. You see the buttons there. Nothing attached to them on this. It'll be on the main housing. So the first thing we have here is the power reel. Take off the plugs. Check that wire a little bit later. And there's your main housing. So it has a little steel spring, obviously to coil the wire. So we'll take off this. Usually there's a little brass plate inside these as well. So a little bit of brass to add to our collection from scrapping this model. Just need to be a little bit careful sometimes when you're taking these out. The spring doesn't spring back on you. So little brass items here. There's also a little brass plate inside. So take them off. There's one. And the second one. And there's little screws here that keep in. I think actually there's not actually keeping anything in, but we'll take the screws out. Add them to the screw pile. Again, everything goes in a little metal box in terms of the screws. So we leave no metal on the plastic whatsoever. Some people would just throw that in the bin, not take off the little metal items, but not me. I take it all off. Just stick that one in the bin. So then we've got the coil. For this we'll just take the power cable off, unwind it. Good thing about obviously hoovers is that sometimes it's quite a long power cord, so it's worthwhile taking off. We'll take this apart so we can get it all out and take out the brass insert as well. Cut the screws. As you can see, so there's those 2 screws to take it off. Not coming out too easily that side. We'll try and break this off. Fairly easy. I'm going to leave that in there at the moment because obviously, as I say, it can spring out. It can be quite dangerous, so we'll leave that for a moment. Our little screws together, and then we'll take out the plugs that are inside this, disconnecting the power from the unit. And there we go, there's the power cord free from the unit itself. As I said, little brass plates inside here. Seem to have a little bit of oil on them. That's fine, we'll clean that up. And we will straighten up the little bits so we can actually just push it through. And we will recover that brass. So that's great. Obviously scrapping it for the copper inside the motor and for the power cord, but to get a little bit of brass out of there as well, a little bit of a bonus. Not a lot of brass obviously, very light piece, very thin piece of brass, but brass nonetheless, so worth recovering. This last piece out. And there we go. So put that in the bin. So there's your brass recovery. That obviously along with the brass that will be contained within the plug. So a little bit of brass, not a lot, but a little bit. A little bit's better than none. And then we come to what we've actually really scrapped it for, which is the motor. So let's just take all the pieces off of this and get this motor out. And we'll keep our wire to one side as well. Little switch here. If you're familiar with scrapping, you'll know that all switches have a little bit of silver inside them, so we'll keep that switch as well. Extract the silver nub that will be inside it, and then we've got some screws here, as you can see, to actually release the motor from its unit. So we'll take them out. Actually, I might be able to get these ones out with the drill. There we go, much easier. Easier on the wrists, and done in no time. There's those 3 screws out. Hopefully now this will release the unit. Certainly release the front plate of it. And should be able to just now pull it out, which we can. So again, let's free the plugs and connections. This little piece here as well, inside there is a little nub of silver as well, so that's worth keeping. At the moment I'll cut all these off and pull the wire through so it frees it from the unit. There we go, and there's the plastic housing, the filter on it, and that can now be discarded. So this is a copper motor, hopefully copper. Some of these can be, let's say, copper plated, the wire inside, and be aluminium copper plated. So you'll be able to see the motor inside there. Obviously a little drive motor inside as well. It's got copper inside it as well and on it. So in terms of freeing this unit, so we'll just get the screws out, loosen that one. These also have little carbon brushes to clean the motor, and usually sometimes they're encased in steel. You can see this one's a steel one, but other times they are brass and copper. There's a little copper end on it or a little brass end on it, so we'll break that open and we'll take the little pieces of brass or copper, whichever the one it is, looks like copper, and we'll store that with our copper, and we'll just stick that in the steel recycling. But these are the little brushes, you can see, keep it all clean. out the second one. Yeah, you'll commonly see these copper. So most of the motors I get actually they are copper. Sure, have one an example of a copper one. Yeah, so obviously it's the same kind of idea, but one copper and one steel. So freeing the unit itself, freeing it out, this can be quite difficult. What I commonly do is I'll break off the top piece here, and then underneath there you need to try and get this screw out, and this screw actually does turn with the motor inside, so you'll see if I turn the screw the motor turns as well, so you need something to clamp onto that to be able to turn the screw on the top. So what I commonly do is I will cut these bits off, so I can then get a pair of pliers in there to clamp onto that and then turn this screw. Now, somewhat unusual with this motor is there's actually a little protective lip going around the outside. Usually you can just get a flathead screwdriver in here and you can flip this off, but with this little protective lip it's making it a little bit more difficult to do. So I really need to try and get into that to get underneath that lip so I can actually pop off the casing underneath. So I have made a little bit of inroad into it. Obviously try to be careful not to let the screwdriver slip, because that would be bad for my hands. And I can get that in behind that, then hopefully pop off. It actually seems to go quite deep against the base of the unit, so I will look at another method to get this one off. Okay, so in closer inspection, actually the lip forms part of this top unit, and as you can see underneath is a way we can possibly get the screwdriver in and pop this off. So we will get it in, see if we can't just pop this off. Yeah, we definitely have some. There we go, popped off. So it's steel, sticks to my magnets, that's steel. This little plate inside is aluminium, so the next step is to try and get that off, but as I say, we need to have something in here holding this so we can actually turn this. Best way sometimes is to actually stick this whole piece in a vise, and that will stop the bottom part turning, or as I say, get some clamps or something in there and hold it while you try and get this screw off. So I'm going to try and use a method of breaking through these pieces, take this top piece off, and that will allow me access to actually clamp onto that piece. So I've got my trusty Magnuson snips. Probably see that I use a lot of Magnuson tools as they are really reliable. These snips are good. This is steel obviously I'm cutting through, and as you can see went through that with very little issue. So we'll continue all the way around. Put that one out of the way. space here so we can get to the next one. Just fold this over a little bit so it's not hindering my wire snips. Actually, those are my wire snips, these are my metal cutters. Obviously, any thicker the metal, the much more difficult to actually cut through. But this is quite thin steel, so not too much of a hassle. Then we can move that one out of the way. So move this back as we did before, so we can get snips in, cutters in, and we'll take off this, cut through this final piece. There we are. And we now have access to this piece, which is the key thing when we're trying to take this apart. So, set of mole grips, essential tool. Let's see if we can attach that in there. Okay, so that's now nice and secure. That will allow us to now remove this. So, find the right screws. So I've got my screw heads here, or my spanners to take off whichever one it is. Not that one. It's starting to turn. Still not easy, and that's just because of the lip on this. You could bang that down with a hammer, flatten it, make it a little bit easier to access. Not the easiest. Certainly don't make them to be easily taken apart. It's starting to loosen it a little. Okay, I'll keep at this and we'll come back once I get this loosened. Okay, so you can now see I've resorted to different tactics. So I've actually had to clamp down this kind of flywheel thing to stop that moving around as well. Seems to be, you know, even though I'm getting the nut turning, it's not actually coming apart and doesn't seem to be coming off the unit. So got the big guns out, got my old Work Pro set out, and hopefully we can make some inroads into getting this off now. Now that nothing else can move other than the screw. But unfortunately, it still doesn't seem to be coming off. Which is baffling. Let's try the pliers. And then we can actually kind of pull on it as we turn it. Hopefully it then catches the thread and plays ball and comes off. Because if that doesn't happen, the next stage is it's getting cut off. No, again, turning nice and freely, but doesn't seem to be coming off. Okay, new method to be tried. Okay, so I managed to figure out a method to get it off, and that was to wedge the screwdriver underneath the nut and kind of push it up on it whilst I was unscrewing it with that. So certainly wasn't the easiest one to take apart, and that is just part one of taking this motor apart, but certainly the most difficult piece. So we now have able to free the aluminium piece, and underneath that we've got some screws that still need to be undone as well. We will free the set of mole grips, put them away. We will tidy up as we go along here as well, and we'll put that back as we no longer need that. Stick that out of the way. Okay, stick our spanners back. And now we can concentrate on taking apart the rest of this motor. So we get these screws out, 2 screws. I'll take off the plastic fan. And then we've got the motor still encased, but what we can do is we can probably knock out that top pin and get that out of the way. There we go. So that relieves that part of the motor. A lot of people take these apart. You can do, but it's quite difficult to get it apart and get all the copper out of it. I actually prefer just to leave them and take them to the scrappies like that. And we'll take apart this unit. Okay, plates off. It now reveals the motor and the copper inside. So we'll free that copper from the outer casing, and to get this out you just need to kind of bang it out with a screwdriver. This is really the kind of best method to do it. So we will do that. Okay, so actually the best method was actually just to stick it up on the vise and bang it out with a hammer, which I've done, and that reveals the motor with the copper inside. Now, I'm not sure if this copper might actually be aluminium, so we will we'll cut it and we'll see. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll just cut it off, and then we'll pull the wire out, and that should give us an insight into, you know, if it's copper or if it's aluminium. If it's copper, you'll know with the weight. If it's aluminium, obviously the weight again tells you, but actually just having a look at it, you can really see with the colour as well if it's copper or if it's aluminium through the pieces that have actually been cut. So we'll pull this lot out. There we go. Yeah, I can tell right away, so light, that that is aluminium wire, so that's obviously pretty disappointing. It's not copper, it's aluminium. You can see on the ends there, you know, that bright silver, which is telling you that's aluminium and it's not copper. So a little disappointing, but I say these things are a lottery. You're not always going to get copper. Sometimes you will get aluminium. So that will go in my aluminium pile, and the other piece will just go in the steel recovery. And really all we're going to get out of this hoover is the copper from the power cord, that little bit of brass. On this as well, these are copper, that's copper all the way around that, so you can recover the copper from that. This wire is likely just to be aluminium as well as this was, so again no point taking that one apart. We'll just send that to the scrap yards as it is. Get the rest of this wire out of here and complete the teardown. Cut this piece. Yeah, a little bit disappointing obviously that it's aluminium, but as I say, you know, you could do dozens of these and they could all be copper or they could all be aluminium. It's really a lottery. It's the same when you're taking transformers apart from the likes of microwave ovens. You know, some of them you'll get they're aluminium and some of them are copper. Obviously we do this for the copper, not for the aluminium, but is what it is. You take what you get, and hopefully next one we'll get a copper motor. Alright guys, so final rundown of what we've actually recovered. As I say, a little bit disappointing to be honest. I expected to get a little bit more copper out of it, but you know, beggars can't be choosers, and you know, picking these items up for free, so you know, we're recycling some good stuff here, so anything that's recycled is good, so you know, it's better than putting it in landfill. So plenty of steel, as you can see, all these items are steel. They will go in steel recovery. We've got some aluminium, so the little fan wheel on the top and the wire that was in the motor, they're all aluminium, unfortunately, just aluminium coated with copper. We've got some brass out of the reel, and actually the ones that were attached to these brushes, they're brass as well, so not copper, they're brass. Got some wire that was attached to the motor. Commonly that can be tin plated wire, but I think that's actually copper wire, so that's good. got these little pieces of copper braiding, and those attach the actual carbon brush to the unit there for cleaning the motors. These little plugs that were attached these wires to the motor, they should be made of copper. Usually they're nickel plated copper, so we keep them and put them all in a bucket. The motor itself, there's copper, as I say, on the outside. This is all copper, but the actual wiring itself on this one is again aluminium or copper coated. So that will go mostly probably in a steel pile normally if you were to salvage the copper out of them, but I'll sell that as a unit along with loads of other ones to the scrapyard. And we have the power cable, which has the copper wire as well, so again that's a decent bit of copper out of that. It's a nice long power cable, so worthwhile keeping. And then finally you've got the little bit of steel inside the reel, the spring, which I'm not going to take out at the moment. I'll actually just probably bung it in the pile as it is. You know, when you're recovering steel to scrap yards, it doesn't really matter if there's plastic attached to it, they'll take it as is, and we just put that in the pile and throw that in the pile as it is. So that's it, guys. That's the teardown of the vacuum cleaner. Other vacuum cleaners obviously give different things, so you know, as I get different vacuum cleaners I will tear them down and show you what we have. But that was an example of one of these kind of small mobile ones. A lot of people use these for cleaning out their cars and things like that. Obviously the big stand-up or upright hoovers offer a little bit more. They've got little smaller electrical motors in them as well, as opposed to, you know, just the big motor. They have the big motor as well as little other kind of brush drive motors. So as and when we will take them apart, we'll stick up the video and hopefully you find that insightful. Okay, thanks for your time, thanks for watching. Hit that like button, hit the subscribe button for any new videos coming. Thanks for watching. Bye now.